All right, Iron Maiden, The Talisman, and Vivo HD. Get out of here, Cosmic. Morgan, no, that was a great song. Thank you for sharing it.
When I stand and look
All right, Bruce.
around the port and contemplate my life, will I ever see my countrymen again? As the captain calls us on the deck, I take my fair walk to the harbor side. I glance back one last time, fleeing our nation, our problems we'll leave behind. Ships by the tenfold sail out on the tide. We are pleased to be out and embracing the open sea, free from our troubles, more free from thee. Heritage unfulfilled, reason behind them. We free from what is not, what is will be. We free the earth, face our harsh reality. Well, death below mist that hangs on the sea.
If you close your eyes and you think finish, then Marco's voice does kind of remind you of Bruce's. I've never thought of it, Nati. Never thought of it like that, but absolutely. And it finish in the sense that it's a little brighter. You know, British English is a little more rounded, is a little more darker. But Finnish language is very forward and bright, and in that sense, I could hear a very similarity to Marco, especially at this point in Bruce's sound. You know, obviously nothing can really compare to either of those singers exactly, but it's a fun comparison. His intensity, it's something I've never noticed because I've talked about this a little bit, but I've never really watched live Maiden. I've only really listened to studio, which is very different. Obviously, very different experience. His intensity is everything. Like, once you look at the face that he brings, look at his eyes.
Free from our troubles, more free from thee.
That intensity is like everything in his singing. It's that intense focus. Oh, Cosmic. Bruce Dickinson's intensity is... This is opening a whole Pandora's box in my brain right now. Let's just keep listening.
Heritage unfulfilled, reason behind them. We free from what is not.
Because he's bald?
Is will be. We free the earth, face our harsh reality. Well, death.
I'd say don't give him a thwop because he'd probably like it, Starkey.
Below mist that hangs on the sea. We run from evil tongues, rash judgment, selfish men, never to be seen on these shores again as we sail into ocean size and lose sight of the land face of content.
That's so funny, Luke.
Around in the air. We're off now to seek all our fortunes to the land of
So this is after he got a little bit of vocal coaching training, and you can hear the difference in the sound, right? It's a lot more forward. It's a lot brighter. It's not as compressed. It's a lot more reliant on resonance. You see him adjusting his face a lot, keeping the sound nice, open, forward, big energy sound. You know, you heard me singing 10 minutes ago. I wasn't supporting my breath as well as I should have been, you know? And what you lose when you don't support is the forward sheen of the sound. And you get a little more tension, right? He keeps that intensity in the sound and keeps it forward by letting that air flow. It's a really, really awesome example of, we listened to some early Maiden. We watched an earlier performance of Maiden, and we heard that intensity and that crazy athleticism in his singing. This is just as impressive, just as bright, just as forward, but it doesn't require as much full-bodied intensity, which in the long run leads to more sustainability, long run leads to a longer career singing, and it's just a really, smart way to sing on his part. Why mention it, Crate? Because it's more about the education, right? That's why. Yeah. Fantastic example of just maximized forward resonance. Skyface, I think I was listening to like a podcast or something. He had vocal coaching at some point in his career, and I think it was around. Let me figure it out. Because that is an assertion I need to be able to back up, right? Oh. Maybe I'm wrong. It wouldn't have been, when I heard it, it was like, wasn't mentioned in his book, so maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I heard it just from the wrong source. So yeah, he says that he's done lessons learning classical and jazz singing as well as speech level singing. Wait a second. No, this is not. No. Nope. That's unreliable source. Yeah, so maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that was an uninformed tip. Thank you for holding me accountable for that, because that is an important. Here we go. In his autobiography, he recalls the very personal struggles he had with his vocal ability in the months leading up to a big audition for someone. Maybe it was for Maiden. But his ex-girlfriend was a classically trained singer. And he used her notebook to get him through that era. He applied the techniques that his ex described in her notes to his own vocal style, and he felt renewed, right? He started to enjoy his newfound pipes. He began to see, and these are quotes that I'm just transliterating. He began to see that a whole new landscape had been opened up. If he was a painter, it would have been like being given a massive canvas and a whole palette of new colors. I love how he describes that, right? This is in an interview, or this is from What Does This Button Do?, which is his autobiography. So yeah, this is in that. So that, okay, so not training, but technical understanding, right? This is Bruce Dickinson, yes. New colors like that. Yeah. So that's the book. These are excerpts from that book that someone arranged for an article on a podcast. Potato. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so no. But later in life, his technique did adjust considerably. As time went on. I mean, that's a no-brainer. With a career as long as his, it's pretty obvious that that would happen. So, yeah, nothing on his Wikipedia page ever. Don't say that in Italy, right? I would let. Now I'm gonna read his book for sure. Pick that up. Anyway, little tangent. But to that point, all I'm gonna say is like, all I'm gonna say is that is all I'm gonna say is that his technique is operatic in the sense that he has a whole dimension of color in his sound, which sets him apart, right? Marco has a very similar depth of sound in his color, but that color, as he gets older, becomes more optimized, more forward. We talk about artists maturing. One thing that matures in a singing and a vocal artist is the sound and the organization of the sound. You can't... A deep color profile is difficult to do, right? A deep color profile is... A deep color profile takes a lot of vocal stamina, a lot of anatomy. And over time, as the voice degrades, as many voices do... Here, I'll make it up to you. As a lot of voices mature and get more frail as time goes on, the singer needs to refine the technique, which is what we can hear between Bruce Dickinson's earlier singing and his later singing. That's all I'm trying to say with that misquote. So if this was in 2012, then it would have been, he would have been what, 54? Look how relaxed his jaw is when he's singing. It's very articulatory. It opens up a lot of space for him. But it's great. It's still relaxed regardless. Yeah, that's mix. To my ear, that is mix. But the male voice needs to have degrees of mix in the higher range in order to maintain chest timbre. I mean, it's the difference between like ah and ah. You know, you have to get halfway between those two, right? You need to, I mean, look, it's not as simple as pouring in some chest, pouring in some head. Now you get your mixed voice, right? It's it's more along the lines of keeping the mechanism free to be able to allow for qualities of both at varying places in range. So while there's no just like mixed voice, mixed voice is like varying ratios of different types of things, and it shouldn't be thought of purely as like a mathematical equation, right? Yeah, you have to stir evenly for 30 minutes over low heat. You're right, Wither. You nailed it. Yeah, no, of course. It's degrees of and versus when we were listening to Jeff Castellucci, who keeps those ratios very specific and even. Bruce is working with much higher ratios of breath pressure, a lot more breath pressure, a lot more chest sound, which means the voice is going to be a lot more wide. We have to vibrate a wider vocal fold, and it's a lot more tight. But to maintain that wide vibration, which is required for a slower, a wider sound, it's hard to say. There's so many dimensions in how the actual technique works. The only thing you need to realize is that when you're using that much breath pressure to maintain that much chest sound in the higher belt, it just means you have to be more conscious of the rest of the mechanism, making sure it stays loose so that you can maintain that intensity in the sound for the belt. And you have to support a lot more with the breath. And that's why you see so much intensity in his face and his body when he sings. It's consistent across many metal singers we watch and listen to. So what he needs to do to get that, right? It doesn't have the same sheen that those pitches had, not sheen, but same color, the same depth that that pitches had, 20 years before this, maybe. It doesn't have the same timbre up in that higher range, but it's a much more organized approach technically. And he does it, he keeps his jaw nice and open and relaxed. He doesn't let anything inhibit the sound. It is just a pure occlusion, a pure groundedness in the sound. His breathing is not pressurizing to push the voice up. It's pressurizing to keep that airflow steady so that he can lower the larynx and maintain that belted quality without adding, unnecessary vibrato or anything that he doesn't want stylistically. Really, really cool. Spralis, take care. It's good to see you. Yeah, timbre. Prima luce. 50 Shades of Timbre, right? 50 Shades of Timbre. Enjoy Outlander.
What?
here's what's awesome about this sound he's making. It's like it sounds just like an electric guitar in some parts of his range. It has that quality of it's straight tone and it's without losing like depth of color. It's so hard to explain. It's hard to wrap your mind around, right? This is a voice that just came together, right? In that quote that I dug up, which I'm glad I did, it's so clear that he just expresses, he just wants to use his voice. He just uses his voice to make the sounds he wants to make. And then he was intelligent and figured out ways to do that in a better way, or a more efficient way. You know, he says he found new colors by understanding techniques, you know, other types of techniques. And you can't wrap a voice like this in vocal terminology. It's just such an awesome piece of history, this voice. There have been so many people who've tried to emulate him and failed. So many people who just wanted to. Yeah, it's a good still frame. and yet this sound, he's made it work for years and years and years and years, where so many people lose their ability. And is that just through grit and hard work? Is that through something crazy about his anatomy? Is it through luck? Is it whatever? I don't know. Maybe all of those, maybe none of them. But it's damn, those are rare. A +5 skill book. Yeah. It's just such a crazy sound. This is, I love it. Yeah, Runa, look, if you want to study singing from an academic standpoint to figure out how to do it, you follow, guidance and the scientific method, and you want to figure out how to sing well that way, you can do it. If you want to just sing out of sheer joy and just keep doing what feels good and not worry about what sounds good, you're also going to find your voice that way. The problem is when people think too much about impressing people with their voice or doing things that maybe are not necessarily natural for their sound. That's when they run into trouble. But when you sing in a way to express how you want to express in a way that feels good, then absolutely. And many do the opposite. Many do the opposite. Too many do the opposite, because our whole world now is about impressing people. Our whole world now is about, being better than the next person. But the great singers never thought about that. The great singers of all time, the great singers right now, the great singers of 200 years ago, it was about expressing, not impressing. And you damage your voice when you do the things that don't feel good. You think you should be self-sacrificing or some way. Self-sacrifice is a huge part of our culture as a global culture. And self-sacrifice doesn't really have any place when it comes to singing, because singing is more about sharing. Sharing, not giving, not overextending, but sharing, really in a holistic sense. How do I practice for a song and sheet music? Do I have Dorkney read it beforehand? Yeah, I do, constantly. She has to actually wrap me up in a blanket and cuddle me while she reads the music to me. You don't get in front of a crowd without at least having some level of wanting people to go, hey, neat. Yeah, but do you want them to go, hey, neat, you sound good, or do you want to go, hey, neat, that song was really touching, or that music was crazy, or that, I love this song or whatever? Because do you want to impress them with your voice, or do you want to share a song with them? Yeah, I mean, the reason they failed, Mike, is because you can't do what someone else, you can't put in the work that someone else put in without knowing how to, you have to reverse engineer a voice in order to sound like it. If you really wanted to copy someone's voice, you'd have to reverse engineer it. The thing is, did Bruce follow anyone else's instructions to get to singing how he is? Even if like wherever I heard this years ago that he did vocal coachings, even if that was true, that he went to a vocal coach to tune up his voice, maybe it's not true. I mean, I couldn't find anything on it. But even if it was, his voice is still his own. He found it on his own. He developed it on his own. Whatever advice he took and whatever he read in that book of his ex-girlfriends and whatever he did was just supplemental to what he did on his own. And that's the same with all good singers. There's no such thing, a teacher or a vocal coach or whatever, they can help you like 10%. The rest of the work vocally is all up to you. It's all about exploration and what you do that feels good, Yeah, a voice can be impressive and a singer's can be impressive, but the intention and the goal of the singer cannot be to impress. That's just a mindset thing. No one on that level sings to impress people. It's to effectively express the music. Right? Right. Different bands to sound like, but it definitely sounds just like Zeppelin. Yeah, I agree. Yes, and maybe. There's a one guy on YouTube who sounds exactly like Bruce. It's uncanny. Okay, so yes, if you work your whole life to copy a sound signature, then yeah, that's work and that's impressive work. But is he going to ever replace Bruce? No. I mean, that's a different conversation. That's a conversation on like the validity of what you're doing. And I think really good cover artists and people, especially like really good imitators, are incredibly gifted, talented in how they use the sounds they hear and integrate it with their voice. So I have heard about the guy who sings just like Bruce, and how he's been successful. But I just don't think. Well, it's not my place to say, if it's valid or not. I just this conversation could go on for hours. So here's the thing. Will someone who has spent all of their time trying to sound like another artist ever be able to perform like another artist? Probably not, because they've spent so much time working on the vocalism. How are they supposed to integrate that with the same performativity? Maybe they can. But an artist like Bruce Dickinson approached singing not from a technical standpoint purely. He was a performer. He did this to get on stage, and that's so clear. But you're right, Capriani. Copy is the highest form of flattery. Absolutely, no doubt about that. I don't think there's anything wrong with doing covers, that kind of thing. With their voice. I don't think they should be ashamed of themselves. That's the thing. I don't think any sort of imitator or someone who finds, I don't think a vocal technician should be looked down upon like that.